Hey, we talk about long-term plans, we talk about long-term goals and strategies. And for a lot of us, we know where we want to go, but to have that and to create the step-by-step long-term growth plan seems insurmountable. We don't know how to do it. Today, we're going to talk to an owner that does it very well. I'm very excited for this episode of Action Cast. Hey, today on ActionCast, we are going to talk about a buzzword that we all hear. No matter what area of business growth you talk about, they talk about having a long-term growth plan. And sometimes it feels like you're the only person in the room that really doesn't know what that's supposed to mean, how you're supposed to create those steps. And we all instinctively talk about it as though we all know. But the truth is that can be challenging. And today I have the honor of talking with an owner that I work with personally, step by step, and I have for a long time. And I have seen her take a long-term growth plan and actually enact that in her business. And so we are talking to Misty, and she really knows what she's doing. Welcome to the program, Misty.
Hi, Katie. Thanks.
So you are the owner or co-owner of Home Helpers Utah. So first off, tell us about where you are in the home care space. Tell us a little bit about your particular agency.
Sure. So we started in 2018 down in St. George, Utah, a little tiny retirement town, very corner of Utah, kind of by Vegas. And then March 1st, 2020, so great timing, we opened up 2 brand new offices up the northern part of Utah in Salt Lake and Ogden, if anyone knows where those are. But so 3 offices now, and we're under progress of opening our 4th office. But going from brand new beginning through growing phases, I've had 2 kids along that process too, in addition to my 3rd that I had before. And between me and my brothers, we've grown to where we should be hitting about $7 million in revenue this year over the last 7 years. So we've had some good growth.
Incredible. And in the home care space, anybody that made it out of COVID is awesome. And somebody that actually started just a little bit before and then grew, that took, I'm sure there were a lot of moments. I'm not trying to minimize that. I'm sure there were moments of uncertainty. And, there's always this risk of over idealizing something. So I know that it has definitely been a growth process for you too. But just in talking to you, I understand and I know I've seen the evidence that you're just really good at long-term planning in general. And that's a whole mindset ability. That's a skill set. And so as far as home care goes, we talk about long-term planning, we talk about short-term goals and long-term goals. And we meet in Action Leaders in the home care community. We meet a lot of owners, and I'm sure you do too, that are really good at where they're at. And they run really strong agencies right at the level they are. They kind of have it down pat. They're used to that devil at that level, they say. But as far as, and they have these big ideas of, man, I want to be here. I want to, maybe they want to run a $10 million agency. Maybe they want to have, a certain amount of billable hours. Mm-hmm. Even though they're good in that space, they don't know how to, that step-by-step process of starting to create that long-term goal. So can you talk to us about what is your experience with that and just kind of start taking us down the road of how to build that long-term plan?
Sure. Yeah, I definitely can. It was a little bit scary April, May, right after opening our offices in 2020, but having that plan in place definitely helped and continues to help as we continue to build. And it made me think of when you were talking, one of the differences we might have from a lot of home care owners, sometimes the question comes up, does an owner need to have experience in healthcare or experience in home care to run an agency? And me and neither of my brothers did. I think it's actually been a strength for us because we hired the people who knew how to run home care and we hired the people who knew the home care skills, but we were stronger on the business skills. So it really helped to balance that out pretty well. But of course, you can always do it the other way around. If you're stronger in home care, you can hire the business skills. So kind of when you asked me about this question, there were three things I was really thinking about. One, we talked about earlier that sometimes people get frustrated about a plateau. And I don't think a plateau is always a bad thing. Sometimes you need to breathe. So sometimes you just need to slow down and breathe. Like the year I had a baby, and then a year and a half later had another one. So I had a toddler and a baby, and that year we only grew 10%. It was fine. Like the plateau was good. A little bit of a breather. And even right now this year, for the last 2 months, we've been focusing on some rearrangements and really helping develop our staff and taking the time to develop them before our next big push. That's something that Jeff Weiger actually mentioned in the last one. He showed kind of stair-step model of you have these pushes, and then it's okay to breathe for a second and take a chance to plan, look at your data, develop your team. Clint had a quote a while ago about if you're operating at 100% capacity, you don't have any room to grow.
That's really good. It also, there's a lot of meat on that bone, but when you say you started with a business plan, was your business plan, we want to grow this amount? Was your business plan, we have this revenue goal? And I love the wisdom of we saw our gaps and hired intentionally based on those gaps. I think there's a lot of young owners that are trying to wear multiple hats at the expense of their own business. They're trying to work in areas that instead of hiring in skill sets, they're trying to just they're treading water because of that. And like you said, growth doesn't always have to mean accelerated, straight up growth, but it does have to be intentional at every level. So that first mapping out, what was that we want to create this, and this? Is that what it was?
It's definitely developed a lot. I think if you would have told me 7 years ago that this is what it would look like now, I wouldn't have understood. Like I'd have no idea what you're even talking about. So it's definitely developed over time. And that intention to something else that Clint always says is like, take the next right step. And so we always have planned out the next step. And yes, I do have a 3-year plan. But if you had told me 3 years ago, this is where we are, I wouldn't have understood. So just you grow as your understanding grows and as your understanding develops. And making sure to have the right team and support the right team. And at first, it really was about more of a numbers goal. Like we need to hit this many hours. We need to hit, this much revenue. Really focused on numbers. And the numbers are very important. And we can't be scared of them. But one thing that we've done this last year, kind of a shift that we've made, is working with another coach and just thinking about a personal coach for what do I actually want my life to look like now. So yes, this is my business, but as far as who I am as a person, what personal flaws do I have? What do I need to work on as a person to be a better leader? And hitting that point where we're realizing that we are kind of the roadblocks of our business at this point. So who do I need to be? And then when I'm that person, when I'm who I need to be, what does my business look like at that point? What are the values that I have? What is important in my business? What does my team look like? What support does my team have? Am I still managing everything, or do I have leaders managing it? And really just stepping back to see the big picture of overall life. Because as a business owner, the business is your life. It just is.
Jessica often says that whole work-life balance thing, that's just fluff words. The point is we have to have a balanced life, and it's going to include work and it's going to include real life. That's good. That's awesome.
You design them together. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. I also want to commend you because I think that you just hit on something too, is reaching a point in your professional and personal growth where you're willing to ask yourself questions that are a little uncomfortable. That made sitting there retrospect.
Very uncomfortable.
We listened for ourselves. And those questions were a little uncomfortable for me to think about having to ask myself. So I think that is. And like you said, you were willing to this year not try and go for those huge growth goals, but you're all investing as an ownership. You're investing in personal growth that will facilitate your professional growth. So that's very impressive.
And the fun thing is we're still growing just as fast.
That's crazy because you have momentum now. You have built up such, and you have invested. I'm going to revert back to what you said earlier. You intentionally put those in place that had the skill sets you needed to where that engine is kind of running itself of its own steam now. So, I mean, that's amazing. So,
yeah, it is. It's kind of fun to watch it grow. And like I said, it is a stair step pattern. So it's not linear, and it's more zigzag up and down. But it's there and it's growing if you develop the right people and develop the right leaders. And then I also wanted to mention not to be scared of the numbers. So I was a math teacher for 13 years before doing home care. Well, actually, it was kind of overlapped a little bit. This was my first year not teaching full time. I do miss them.
We have all stories about that. She's here. She's part of Action Leaders, and she would be running these huge numbers, like millions of dollars a year. And she'd be like, well, I have to go teach. And I'm sitting there thinking, girl, you are crazy, but it's awesome.
Yeah. I love both of them, but numbers, I noticed a lot as a math teacher that it wasn't usually a lack of ability that held people back. It was fear of the numbers and just helping them get past that fear. And I think the same thing for an agency owner. If you can work past that fear and see what the value of the numbers is, have someone just like help you simplify it a little bit. The numbers are helpful if you know which ones to watch. I went the other way. I watched too many numbers, and I'm kind of pulling back now and realizing some of these numbers should be owned by my team. And some of these I should own. But find a way to make them not as scary, and it'll help.
That's awesome. It also helps me realize that just having knowledge, the fear is something we present to ourselves, like numbers in and of themselves. There is, I think it's Clint that says there is no such thing as a bad outcome. There's no such thing as a bad statistic. It's just we interpret it that way because that's not the way we wanted it to go. But if you spend $5,000 on a marketing campaign and you don't get one lead or one referral from that really isn't a bad outcome. That's just an outcome showing that is not the way. That's not getting your desired outcome, but it actually has shown you, and you have the ability to improve from it, But it does go back to not being scared of the numbers. So, so where are you at? Are you releasing the numbers now? Or are you just kind of, where are we at with that?
So that's one. We just hired a director of operations this year, and kind of going back and forth a little bit with my two brothers that I own this with, and deciding what numbers do we need to have reported to us each week. What numbers, and we've kind of given some ownership over to him too. Like, these are different teams that we have. We need you to tell the teams what numbers they're tracking, and we can help show you how to find those numbers. So he's only like 2 months in. So definitely, like, if you think this number is important, here's some what we tracked before. My spreadsheets were pretty crazy. I was tracking a lot and they scare people, but you don't need that many, and really narrowing it down to, I don't remember who it was at one of our in-person sessions, but really narrowing it down to this number can indicate if there's a problem somewhere else. And then if this number starts to change, that's when we dive deep into all the rest of them. And so we don't have it quite narrowed down yet to which exact numbers we're following, but we've definitely narrowed down a lot and are working on training our teams on those numbers too, so that it's not just me tracking it all.
That's awesome. And I'll insert here, just from my background in Action Leaders and working with coaches every day. One of your strengths, I can tell right now, is that you helpfully question everything. Like you just said, we made a choice to hire a director of operations. There's a lot of home care owners or business owners, not just home care owners, but business owners that would have said, oh, we're at X amount of revenue. It's time to hire a director of operations. We're at X amount of billable hours. It's time to hire this person. And going by all these abstract charts that were created in a world not of your own, but you and your brothers, you question, and not just to not get the answer you want. Like you don't question it with an answer in mind. You question it helpfully. And then you kind of have that stair step of, we made the choice to do this. You're taking control of your own business by making those little micro choices of, that, okay, it is now time to do this. It is now time to do that. And I can tell you have a lot of personal and professional control of it just because you're willing to ask the right questions. So just observationally for other home care owners listening out there, I want to encourage you that there is nothing that anywhere else makes you do. If it is not a state regulation or it is not something you have to do because it's part of a franchise you're part of or something, there's nothing that makes you do something because somebody else is doing it. That we are very individual. Businesses are very individual and distinct. I'm going to go back to Chick-fil-A and say that, Chick-fil-A came into the fast food industry and they chose a slightly different adapted model because they didn't accept what every single other business was doing that was in their space was exactly right. And they just made those little tweaks. And like those little tweaks have amounted to an amazing business model. So, but anyway, I could like hearing you talk, you make me want to like keep following up, but I'm going to go to the next. What are some anchor best practices to have when you're building out these long-term plans? Do you have, do you stay really flexible? Do you had an original long-term business plan with your brothers? Is that still like the foundational anchors you go to? Is that tweaked quarterly or biannually? Like, what is the process for those anchor best practices for that long-term growth plan?
So the original plan actually was to build it pretty large and then sell. And then I decided I actually like doing this. I never intended to leave teaching. It was always just a business decision. Like we'd had some rentals, real estate, and it was not really something you get attached to. It's just a business process. But this one sucked me in and definitely plan to stick around long term now. And that was a conversation we actually had about 6 months ago with my brothers and some of us trying to decide like what do we want. Coming back to like we had another coach was working with us personally. And yeah, deciding that no, I don't want to just build it and then sell it. Like I actually like doing this. I want to keep doing it for a while. So it has changed over time. But kind of some of the things that help me with flexibility are having that long-term plan there. I don't remember who said the quote, but something about like goals are written in stone and plans in sand or something. Like the way to get
sand, not cement. It's just sand, not cement. Yeah.
Yeah, something like that. Like it's a plan to get there. And it's okay to change the plan as long as you know where you're going. And sometimes it's actually okay to change where you're going, but you still have to have a plan and a path that you're following. And one of the things I've always said is that it always works out. And I've realized that over life, not in home care even, but just in my life, a lot of things don't go how I want and they don't work how I want. They don't work how I picture. Our business, you have horrible days where 8 people call in sick on the same day and you're out of state. It doesn't work out, but in the end, it always does. And that's one thing I've tried to really use with my teams to help them be positives, to help teach them that it always works out in the end. Every time. It always does. Not how you want it to, but it will. It'll work.
That's right. That's right. So much of what you're saying, like, and I'm a pastor's wife, so I always revert back to scripture, but there's scriptures that talk about that, man divines his way, but God directs his paths. And without vision, people perish. My people perish, it says. That doesn't necessarily mean we're going to wind up exactly where we see ourselves at that vision. That's God's, that's our design, that we need a path. We need a direction, and it's okay for us to have a direction. And then for, God, for life to kind of retweak that as we go. That doesn't mean it was ever wrong. That just means that our destination might be a little different, but we would have never gotten there. You and your brothers had this plan to build up real quick and sell. And maybe that's not the way it works out, but you would have never gotten where you're at today if you didn't have that initial push, if you didn't have that initial vision. So that's really true. And that's to other home care owners, work on your vision, even if it doesn't wind up being exactly where you go, exactly where you wind up. How does that affect your team? Like, what does your team dynamic look like? Is it all because you do like the numbers, you do like the statistics? Is there kind of empowerment with your team to do this, to do that, to make their own decisions and kind of let them stand and fall on their own? Or is there like a layer of management that makes every decision? What does your team look like with these long-term goals?
I do not want to make every decision. That's overwhelming. So one thing Nicole talked about a while ago at one of our in-person events also was controlled failure. And I remember her talking about when she brought in someone to manage, I think it was her assisted living home, letting them have those little failures that they're not going to hurt anything. They'll learn from it. It'll work out. It'll be okay. But it also helps them to learn that leadership and helps them to trust you and you to trust them. So we give them the guidelines. We give them all the support that they need. I'm always here if they need anything, and they know that. But letting them make those choices, even if it's not how I would do it or the way I would do it, as long as they're following the core principles and our core values. So as long as they're sticking to like the compliance that we need to, they're sticking to the things that we value as a company, then they can make the decision.
That's awesome. And it's awesome to see how well that is working day in and day out in an agency where you have had overall very steady, very gaining success, but it hasn't been done because every single decision was yours, or you felt the need to control this or control that. So I think that's empowering to owners that let that be, because I know working with owners that we feel the need to control everything, to control, I can't tell you how many owners we work with that are still doing the initial assessment or still doing that closing call or still doing, and it's because they just can't, they have built it in a way to where they're so worried about that one metric that they think is going to, open or close their agency, that just allowing that growth on your team is really important. So there are owners that are listening to this now, and I do encourage owners, this will be in the Facebook community, so you can go back and listen to this, because a lot of what Misty has said is one of those things where the more you listen, the more you'll be able to absorb the wisdom of it. But there's owners that are listening to this that know they have they need a long-term plan, and what they have is a long-term dream. They know they want this. They want a retirement, or maybe like you, they want to build a business to sell. Like that is not a bad goal. That's perfectly acceptable business goal. So if they know that, and maybe they're good at the day-to-day, how do they go about, what is that first step they take, those first few crucial steps to get and start writing that long-term plan and giving themselves grace to, this is my long-term plan, the next few steps? What is some good practices that they can do, like first, like right now?
I think deciding what you want your life to look like. So not thinking about even the business, which is, you're making a business plan, you're starting not thinking about the business. Yeah. Like really, what is your goal? You mentioned, a goal of selling, or a goal of maybe they want to make a difference with a certain population, maybe. So my grandma with dementia actually passed 1 year ago today. Mm-hmm. And that was something that I didn't even envision having from this business, because when we started, we didn't even know she had dementia. But maybe your goal is to make an impact in the dementia community, or maybe your goal is to make an impact with Parkinson's community, or with adults with disabilities. Like, what is your goal? And then once you have your goal, just figure out what does it take to get there, and then keep backing up until you have another phrase that Clint uses a lot is the next right step. Mm-hmm. So just back up one step at a time until you get to where you are now, and then you can see what to do next.
That's awesome. Basically reverse engineer, like just like have it in reverse. And that's really good, because, and that's the thing. Every owner that is interested in this conversation, that feels there's growth here, sit down and ask yourself, what do I really want my life to look like? Not what do I want my bank account to look like, or what I want this number, like what do I want my actual life to look like? And then reverse engineering how you get there. That's awesome. And I challenge every owner to do that. And drop in the comments, what do you want? Put it out there. Like, write out a sentence, write out a phrase, what you want your life to look like. And I promise you can get there. There isn't a point on anywhere on this planet where you can't get to the other end of the globe if you don't start out on that journey and do it in the right way. And maybe you'll get confused here and there, but there's always that ability to keep moving forward. So I really appreciate that. And what is You don't have to get specific with this, but to kind of land the plane, how much do you feel like your long-term plans are adapting right now? Like, do you feel like, oh, this is finally the vision? Or is there still that wonder of, man, I wonder where this is going to take me? I think this is where I'm going. Where do you feel in that process?
Oh, we have lots in the plan still. I have so many ideas. I tell our director of operations, like, I will give you ideas until like your brain explodes. You don't have to do them all right now. But yes, we do have some other plans in mind for other service lines, other areas, better ways to support our staff. We've got lots of plans still in place.
That's awesome. And that's the thing. I've known you for a while now. I'm honored. And you never run out of a plan. You are, every time I'm in a conversation with you, you're like, and we're planning to do this. I'm like, wow. Okay. Well, this has been an amazing conversation. And I really appreciate you investing in other home care owners who, some of them are starting and they look at themselves as caregivers that started a business, and some of them are business people that are trying to figure out this home care industry. And at the end of the day, it's business, and it's meant to be your life. It's meant to be whatever your plans, whatever serves you best. And I appreciate a conversation that moved that forward. We absolutely want you, the owner, I'm talking to you, to be part of this community. If there are ways we can support you, reach out to us. Let us know. This is home care and this is what we want to do. We want to help others see that there is a vision past where they're at and maybe what they see as possible today. Because like Misty said, and she knows vision and numbers better than anybody I know, it's still wound up to be different for you. And that's good. That's healthy. So thank you so much for being part of today's conversation.
Thanks.
And I want to invite all of our owners to stay tuned to ActionCast. We do this weekly. We want to support you, the owner, get from where you're at right now to help you get to where you're meant to be. This is the conversation we will keep having because it's a conversation that we can all benefit from. I look forward to having you next time here on ActionCast.